Good morning, parents, siblings, extended family members. My name is Silvia Longo. I'm a senior studying statistics and sociology, and I'm honored to be serving as student body president and to introduce your speaker today. I feel very fortunate to have my family visit me each family weekend, and fortunate that each time my dad insists on taking my friends out to eat. Many of my friends' families are not able to visit for any number of reasons, and he loves to treat them as his own kids for a weekend. Sometimes that involves embarrassing them publicly instead of me, so I tend not to mind. Family weekend reminds me as well that there are many ways to define and make up your family. I often reflect on the chosen communities I'm a part of at Amherst, like our student government or the ultimate Frisbee team. I also like to reflect on Amherst College as a whole and who's always working to create our community here. Dean Epstein, our Dean of the Faculty at Amherst, is someone who cares deeply about forming our Amherst community. She has been a caring, dedicated, and witty presence on this campus since my first year here, and it has been a pleasure getting to know her better through my role in student government. Dean Epstein has taught various European history classes at Amherst and is the author of 4 books on German history, including her most recent, Nazi Germany, Confronting the Myths. It's my pleasure to introduce you all, Catherine Epstein.
So good morning, everyone, and thank you, Silvia, for that nice introduction. I am really sorry about the weather. It is a disaster out there. I'm also, if you're a Red Sox fan, I'm sorry about what happened last night. That's also not in my control, but what is in my control is that I will not speak for 7.5 hours. So you don't need to worry about that part of it. So I hope that you are enjoying Family Weekend. Usually our president, Biddy Martin, would be holding this conversation with you. I believe you all got an email explaining her absence. Her niece is getting married this weekend in Virginia. So I'm going to talk for maybe 15 to 20 minutes and then open it up to your questions. I'm also accompanied by several, or actually many senior staff members sitting over here. So a little bit more about me. I've been at Amherst since 2000 when I came to the college as an assistant professor of history. I was named dean in 2014, and the dean, that is me, oversees the academic program of the college, so I'm the chief academic officer. I work to recruit and retain our faculty, 188 tenure-line professors, and another 50 to 60 lecturers and visitors each year. Many administrative departments report to me, including athletics, the library, our museums, and many of the departments that support our students academically. It's an incredible honor and privilege to be involved in the running of an institution such as Amherst College. What we're doing here, I believe, is really remarkable, and I hope that your student is having a wonderful experience. So thank you for entrusting your students to us. I say that having myself a college-age child, not at Amherst, and I know something about what it means to send a child to college. You've given us a great gift as well as a great responsibility. At Amherst, your student is surrounded by adults who want the very best for them. That includes faculty members, coaches, and the many staff members who work at the college. It's well known that students succeed best in college when they have connected to at least one adult at the institution and to a small number of close friends. At Amherst, we're working hard to make sure that this happens. Our faculty is made up not only of terrific scholar teachers, but also individuals who care very deeply about your students as whole human beings. It is often said that our faculty members, and this is true of our staff as well, are distinguished by an ethic of care. Our faculty members put enormous time and effort into working with your student inside the classroom and in office hours. But beyond that, they are often present when your child or your student competes on the playing fields, and they are often there when your student performs on our many stages or is otherwise engaged in co-curricular activities. Moreover, when faculty members sense that a student may be in any sort of distress, they are quick to put that student in touch with adults who can help. So your student is also extremely well served by our terrific staff, That's true of our coaches, our counselors, our librarians, our custodial and dining facilities staff, and many others here at the college. And what they're working to do is to ensure that your student is successful here. So please believe me, your student is in really very good hands. I'm now going to talk a little bit about what's new at the college. I'm going to speak first about academics and then move on to some other topics. You may have noticed a very large new building. We were thrilled last weekend to officially open our new Science Center. I hope that you've had reason to visit the Science Center. Perhaps you attended a class there. Has anyone been in the building? A little bit, okay, that's pretty good. The new Science Center is really transformational in many ways. So first and foremost, it illustrates the college's commitment to cutting-edge science education and research. We have long been among a very small number of liberal arts colleges that have the faculty and the facilities to carry out first-rate scientific research. And with this building, we joined, or rather created, an even more rarefied group, those that have a true state-of-the-art integrated science facility. This building is remarkable for a science building. Most liberal arts colleges do not have the superb facilities that we have. Some universities, of course, do, but their science facilities are spread out. We, however, have one integrated science building that houses almost all of our science departments. The kinds of teaching and research that we can carry out in the new building is really remarkable. Last weekend, we opened the building with, among other events, a lab crawl. Each department held presentations, often by students. So Silvia, for example, gave one of those presentations from the statistics department. Students gave presentations about the kinds of work they are doing, and also we really emphasized the work that faculty are doing with students in order to advance knowledge in the sciences. So the building has been built to be entirely transparent. And in the 21st century, we believe that most complex problems are solved not by examining a question from the perspective of one discipline, but from that of several or even many disciplines. The new Science Center is built to foster conversations among faculty members and students from a range of disciplines, and this, we believe, will enhance their research potential. The building also allows for state-of-the-art teaching and fabulous classrooms that are equipped with technology, furniture, equipment, and other conditions, such as good airflow and light that enhance learning. The building, though, is not just transformational in terms of science education and research. It's also intended to build community among students and faculty, and among students and faculty at the college as a whole. In fact, a third of all classes being held in the building this semester are non-science classes. That means that our humanities and our social science professors are also teaching in the building. The building has a cafe, nothing better than caffeine to draw folks together, and the many study spaces throughout the building, from the large atrium or living room to the little nooks and crannies where students can study as they will, are intended for all students. From what we've seen, students are making use of the building in all the ways that we intended and in all the many hours of the day when the building is open. The new Science Center is also transformational in terms of our campus. We have now completed 3 major projects that draw what we call the East Campus into the campus as a whole. When we built the Science Center, we placed it on the site of 5 old dorms. Known as the social dorms because of their suite-style living, these dorms were well beyond their useful life. To replace those dorms, we built 4 new dorms known as the Greenway dorms. Those dorms were opened 2 years ago and now house sophomores, juniors, and seniors, although I believe mostly sophomores and juniors. To integrate the new dorms and the Science Center into the campus, we've done a massive landscaping project, the Greenway Project. This landscaping is intended to draw the East Campus into an organic whole with the rest of the campus. So our more formal quadrangle campus on the hill is now complemented by a more informal landscaping further down the hill. We hope that this will also soften the visual impact of what is actually a very massive building. So how many of you have students who are interested in STEM in the scientific fields? Let's get a show of hands. How many STEM? Okay, interesting. As you may know, at Amherst and across the country, we are seeing a huge wave of interest in STEM. And our enrollments in STEM classes have grown very dramatically in the past decade. In that 10-year period, the percentage of our students who major in at least one STEM field has grown from less than 20% to almost 40%. The mathematics major, for example, is now one of the 3 top majors in the college. 10 or 12 years ago, there were maybe 8 majors a year in math, and now we're up to somewhere between 80 and 90 majors per year in math. The other 2 largest majors are economics and English. We are working really hard to ensure that your student has reasonably sized classes in STEM fields. So for some of the introductory classes, this has been a challenge. We have, however, been adding new faculty to all of our STEM departments, and we've also added instructional support staff, some number of visiting faculty every year, as well as additional lab instructors and other support staff. Despite the crunch on STEM faculty, we are trying to ensure that students interested in STEM get what we promise, namely the close colloquy between faculty and students that characterizes liberal arts education. Moreover, we expect that all students who wish to have a research experience in one of our science labs actually has that opportunity. So let me now turn to the humanities. How many of you have students studying the humanities? All right, so I got sort of actually kind of half and half in sort of the hands. You're in very good company. I'm proud to say that half of all Amherst students have at least one major in the humanities. This is actually totally off the charts for select liberal arts colleges. We have the highest numbers of humanity majors of any select liberal arts college. I actually think this is very much related to the fact that we have an open curriculum, and so it makes it quite easy for students to double major. About a third of all students double major. It is, though, also a testament to the strength of our humanities faculty. Students want to study with our amazing humanities faculty, and one of the interesting things about Amherst is that we have not seen a move away from the humanities, especially in terms of course enrollments. And that's why it doesn't make sense to us, for example, to move large numbers of faculty lines to the STEM fields. The humanities have long been a strength of Amherst College. We actually have a storied writing tradition. We are the writing college. To name just a few literary giants associated with Amherst, Emily Dickinson lived in town, and we have some of her papers in our library, as well as her house belongs to us. Robert Frost served on our faculty, and David Foster Wallace was a student here. We have amazing resources for students engaged in the literary tradition. We have amazing archival collections related to writers in our library. We have our own literary magazine, The Common. As I just mentioned, we own the Emily Dickinson Museum, very close to campus, and we own the Folger Shakespeare Library in Washington, D.C. How many of you knew that? Not bad. Okay, good. We're making progress on our relationship to the Folger. So I say all this because for students interested in the humanities, we are creating many of the same kinds of opportunities that have long been available to students in the sciences. We have, for example, long had programs for students to work in science labs over the summer. But in the past decade, we have also created research and internship opportunities for our students in the humanities. This includes a research tutorial program in which students take a small class in the spring with a faculty member and then spend 6 weeks during the summer continuing that research. This has resulted in multiple books, articles, and digital exhibitions co-written and co-curated by students and their faculty members. In addition, we have created summer internships and research opportunities in our museums and library. So students interested in those areas can get a sense of what it's like to do sustained research in the humanities or to work in a cultural institution, both on campus and off campus. So as many of you know, we have built a very diverse student body here at Amherst. We want students to engage with others different from themselves and to do so in ways that we feel are organic and authentic. We are thus building opportunities for students to work together over shared intellectual passions. We hope that this will help to foster community among students at the college. Some of our students have participated in faculty-led trips linked to courses. Last spring, students went with two professors to Istanbul. Others spent a week in Puerto Rico, and a third group went to Washington, D.C. This year, students are going to Colombia, South America, to Austria, and to Spain. And to me, it's really important, the intellectual experience that students are getting, but perhaps even more importantly, they are getting opportunities to bond with students, other students in these courses through a 24/7 experience. Students rave about these travel experiences, not only about the intellectual work that they did, but also about the friendships that they formed with students with whom they never imagined they would be friends. In general, we are working on building cohort experiences for your students so that they join a small cohort of students interested in similar intellectual questions. We have a math fellows program, a computer science fellows program, and a statistics fellows program in which students take on projects, often for other departments of the college. We are also building cohort-based internship programs in our museums and library. Some faculty also run cohort-based summer research programs. This is true of many of our science labs, and a great example is Professor Ashley Carter's work with students doing a robotics project last summer. So in addition to these initiatives, there are a few other initiatives that I'd like to mention. This fall, we welcomed our first group of Meiklejohn Fellows to campus. The Meiklejohn Fellows program is for first-generation students and/or low-income students, those who are Pell eligible. The program is named after a legendary president of Amherst, right down there on the first floor. If you look around, he's on whatever. If you're turning around, he's on your right. The guy sort of stern with the collar right there. He is legendary. He was president 100 years ago, from 1912 to 1924, and he actually put Amherst on the map intellectually. So 29% of the class of 2022 are Meiklejohn Fellows. Meiklejohn Fellows will receive a paid summer opportunity, usually an internship through the college. But to get this opportunity, Meiklejohn Fellows must go to the Loeb Center for Career Exploration and Planning and talk to career advisors. The goal is to get Meiklejohn Fellows to build networks with Amherst alumni and others so that they can secure meaningful internship or other work experiences that will serve them well as they look for post-Amherst career opportunities. For all students, engagement with the Loeb Center can be enormously beneficial. So if your student has not yet gone to the Loeb Center, please nudge them to do so. No time is too early. We are at the forefront of a whole movement of rethinking career services at colleges. Career services used to be places where seniors went to have their resumes checked and perhaps to have an interview with recruiters from finance or consulting companies. But it's a whole another day in career centers today, and especially at Amherst. We now want to engage with students from their very first days on campus. We have dedicated career advisors to students interested in business and finance, health professions, arts and communication, and K-12 education. And we're working on securing career advisors in government and nonprofit work, as well as science and technology. Among other things, these career advisors run career treks during interterm and spring break. So for example, they take students interested in finance to New York City, those interested in education to Chicago, in technology to Silicon Valley, and in the arts to Boston. So please remind your student that the Loeb Center is there, ready and eager to welcome them. And if you are able to provide an internship to an Amherst student, please be in touch with the Loeb Center. This is another really excellent way to connect with the college. So I'd like to turn to a few other areas of college life. I'd first like you to meet Karu Kazuma, our new Chief Student Affairs Officer. Karu, could you just stand? In a few minutes, I'll give you a chance to ask questions, and I'm sure some of you will be asking Karu questions. Karu joins us from the University of Pennsylvania, where he was in charge of residential life. He went to Middlebury as a college student, worked at Middlebury in residential life, and then worked at Columbia University before moving on to Penn. Karu brings a whole new philosophy to student affairs at Amherst. I anticipate that some of you may ask questions about social life on campus. For years now, our senior and alumni surveys have shown that students are very satisfied with their academic life at the college, but that they have been somewhat less enthusiastic about their social life. Students complain about the athlete-non-athlete divide. They believe that we have too strict a party policy. They say that our students self-segregate in the dining hall and in our dorms, and you have likely heard some or even all of this from your student. As an institution, we are working hard to address these matters. We are thinking of ways to make sure that all students feel as though they belong on campus. We are thinking of ways to foster bridge building among students. Students tend to be very happy with their first-year living situation when everyone is randomly thrown together in dormitories. But in the sophomore year, many students separate out into their friend groups, which they think they're going to like, and in some ways they really do. And they also separate out often according to academic interests. Yet in separating out, some students seem to feel a certain loss, and they want to have a greater sense of belonging to a campus community. So we are considering various ways to help them to do this. Among other things, perhaps building more traditions for the classes. So what I mean is more traditions for the class of 2022 and that sort of sense of class tradition. And if you ask him, I'm sure that Karu can and will speak to these issues. Another person I'd like for you to meet, or see at least, is our new Dean of Admissions and Financial Aid, Matt McGann. Matt is right there. Matt comes to us from MIT, where he was the Director of Admissions. As some of you may know, we have over-enrolled our first-year class. Instead of our planned 472 students in the class of 2022, 492 wonderful students accepted our offer of admissions. We only have 472 beds on the first-year quad right behind me. All the other rooms were occupied, and so if you have a first-year student, it is likely that that student now has two best friends and are actually living in triples. Roughly 60 first-year students are living in triples. So Matt can answer any questions that you might have about admissions. If you have questions about college finances, Kevin Weinman, our Chief Financial Administrative Officer, is here as well. I think, yeah, right there, okay. And while the last few days have been pretty rocky on the stock market, in general, college finances are in very good shape. Last spring, we launched our Promise campaign, the campaign for Amherst's third century. We've raised approximately $360 million towards a $625 million goal. The campaign will help us to add faculty lines, provide research support for faculty, add financial aid, create more summer opportunities for students, and provide additional pedagogical support for faculty and instructional support for students. We are also prioritizing student life, although with Karu just starting off here, he and we are still considering the best strategy to do that. The campaign is expected to end in 2023, but in the meantime, we will have the college's bicentennial. Amherst was founded in 1821, and we expect that the academic year 2020-2021 will be particularly rich in terms of reflecting on our past 200 years. As a historian, I'm really excited to be involved in the planning of this event. And interestingly, Amherst has in some ways stayed very true to its original mission. Its original mission was educating indigent students to become ministers. Amherst remains extremely committed to access. In addition, excellence has really become part of the Amherst tradition, and that's been especially true since Meiklejohn was president. And yet Amherst is also changing in many ways to match the needs of an evolving world. So what we are doing here is everything that we can to preserve great liberal arts education while adapting to the needs of students in a rapidly changing world. I think it's a great time to be at Amherst, and I think it's a great time for you and your student to be involved with Amherst. So I'm going to end here so that we have plenty of time for question and answer. So thank you for being here, and thank you for listening. If you have a question, please raise your hand and we will get a microphone to you. Looks like right here is one.
Thank you for that. Biddy Martin in the past had explained, I'm a parent of a sophomore, that with the retirement of many faculty members that presented opportunities for diversifying the faculty, in particular historical minorities and possibly first-generation faculty. Can you give us an assessment or report on where Amherst is on that front?
So Amherst is moving pretty aggressively on that front. Since Biddy Martin became president in 2011, we've hired about a third of our tenure-line faculty. So roughly 60 faculty members are new. Many of them are still pre-tenure. Many of them are really interested in working, or all of them are really interested in working with our student body in the sense of engaging in new pedagogical approaches. When we talk about the actual diversity of the faculty, that has risen from about 14% a decade ago to about 24% now. So faculty members of color are still, obviously a much smaller number than our domestic students of color on campus, but we are making very good progress on that front. In recent years, more than half of our tenure line hires have been faculty members of color, in some cases also international faculty members of color. So again, it's slow. You can turn over a student body in 4 years. It can take a generation to turn over a faculty body, but we are pleased with the progress that we're making, and there's still lots more work to be done. We are always particularly concerned about areas or fields of specialization that may not have as diverse a pipeline as we would like. This can be particularly true of the quantitative fields, but again, we've made great hires of diverse faculty in science fields, in math, and in economics. And one of our hopes is that your student, whether a student of color or a white student, may want to go into academia. And because we have such a diverse student body, we are hoping that we are also really helping to create the faculty members of tomorrow. So we're making good progress, but still lots of work to be done.
We're parents of a sophomore also, and I'm wondering what we might expect to see this year as far as the broadening of the social experience or the softening of some of the divisions that you talked about, and what can we expect if all goes well by her senior year? What will the kind of social party environment look like, the athlete, non-athlete division, some of these things that you mentioned?
Okay, Karu, it's time for you.
So I appreciate that question. Let me start at the end point of your question, which is what to expect, hopefully, from when your child graduates. I hope your child can say that they have deep connections with at least a few students. Ones that the student feels like knows them, will be with them for a long time. I'm trying to balance how many people think community is having 1,000 friends, because I think that's how people have constructed community now online, and really talk about what community really means. Community means being there for each other at the tough times. Community means calling each other out when they think you're not doing well enough in this regard. You got to step it up. I know the folks who really are part of my community are honest with me. The ones who are community in my world are the ones who are going to be there for me. So at the end of this time, I want your child to be able to say, I've got friends who will do that for me, plus say they're really different from me because of their interests, because of who they are, because of their experiences, because of what they're going to be doing. So if your daughter is going to become a doctor, but wants to figure out how to navigate higher ed, maybe they have a friend who's going to be like me and works at college. To have that diversity of also occupations is going to be a component of it. To get there, I think we want to make sure that students have an opportunity to be able to connect with each other in smaller venues in ways that they can spend real time with each other, on one hand, and then two, they can spend time with each other in a larger venue where they feel like there is a larger Amherst experience. So to do those things, I think we're working with students to ask them what ideas do they have, what are things that are going well for them, because I don't want to always look at the model as there's a gap, we need to fill that gap. I want to strengthen the things that are going well, because I think there's a lot of folks who are having a great experience, and maybe they feel like they haven't shared that enough with other people. So if I can ask those students, what are those experiences? How can we make them more pronounced? How can we make them more plentiful for all students? I've been working with a lot of different students. Actually, Silvia is part of an advisory board that's been helping to contextualize the Amherst experience for me. And I've been soliciting ideas. So if there's a bad idea, I'm going to totally blame Silvia and the students. If there's a good idea, I'm going to take complete credit for it. But in all seriousness, that's the only way I think we can really start to unpack how to make sure that the student experience is the one that they want, by working with them, having the students work with each other who all may have different interests. And from there, we're really coming up with maybe what the sophomore experience will be in the spring. What event would be really meaningful for them? And as the juniors go abroad and you're scattered, what are going to be some meaningful ways that they bring back the folks who are abroad to feel like their transition back to Amherst is a good one. And as they become seniors, maybe the first part of their seniors' fall semester, we can ask them to push back and think about what it was like to be in this building the first week they were here as first years, and reflect how much growth they've had, reflect on all the different experiences. So those are some of the ideas that I think we're trying to push forward, but it's going to be a community effort, and there's a lot of good people here who are trying to make this happen.
Got one down here. Thank you. Thanks. This is not a social life question. So much has been written, and we hear so much about how for this generation, the nature of work will be so different. And I would love to hear how Amherst is thinking about that programmatically in terms of the curriculum and preparing our students for how their careers are going to look very different from their parents.
So we believe really strongly that what liberal education is all about is really developing habits of mind that are going to be useful for just about anything that students are going to do. So we are really focused on making sure that your students can think hard and think well, that they can write well, that they can communicate effectively, that they have skills in research, that they know how to find information, that they can tell good information from bad information. And most of these, or all of these skills, are actually transferable. One of the things that we want is for your student to really range broadly across the curriculum. It is best, if, in my view and in the view of many faculty members, is if your student just has one major and is actually exploring many, many different ways of looking at problems and looking at ways to consider how to solve whatever issue is confronting them. That's part of what we're doing, and really doubling down on the liberal arts skill, or the skills that are developed through liberal arts education. The other part of that is really focusing on internships and opportunities and learning by doing opportunities both within the classroom and beyond the classroom, so that students have exposure to many different possible careers now. I mean, ideally, they would be doing different things over their 3 summers while they're at the college to explore other careers. In some cases, they may be needing to build additional skills that we don't teach at the college, or more, financial skills or computer software skills, and we're very interested in supporting that. So our goal is both to sort of double down on liberal arts, on the core functions of a liberal arts education, because that's what we believe will serve them best. We don't know what the jobs are going to look like in 5 or 10 or 15 years, but we're pretty confident that whatever jobs those are, they're going to involve thinking hard, really good reading skills, research skills, quantitative skills, all the things that they get at Amherst should be able to be transferred to whatever it is that they need to address in their jobs. It's one part, and again, the other part is really much more focused on career, really networking and getting the sense of, well, how do you get jobs? How do you learn about jobs? All of that we're really trying to focus on through the Loeb Center for Career Exploration and Planning, and that's why we want your students to be involved in the Loeb Center much earlier than perhaps you were in your college career.
Thank you. I'm the parent of a sophomore, and this is really a more general question. So I wouldn't say the planet is facing a catastrophe, but everything that lives on this planet is facing a catastrophe in terms of climate change, and we're not doing near enough or anything at all to respond to that crisis. I was wondering if from the perspective of Amherst, you'd considered having a class that all incoming students take to focus on this issue, because just to reflect on the previous question, what will life and jobs look like? Well, this is the overwhelming issue that will be facing everybody, and so to have a campus-wide conversation, this may be a good way to start.
So that's a fascinating question. I'm going to answer actually the second part of your question and then hand over the first part to Jim Brassard. But the second part of your question was about a required class. And Amherst, as you know, has had an open curriculum, or maybe you don't know, it's had an open curriculum since 1971. And it is very hard to force students to do anything, and even harder to force faculty members to do anything. So I think it would be very, very hard to insist that all students and faculty members get a particular content in a course. Certainly, we want to make courses in environmental studies available to everyone, and they are indeed available. So again, you raise a really interesting point about, shouldn't we be really insisting that our students address major issues of the day, not only climate change, but you could make an argument, around race relations and ethnic relations, all those sorts of things. We have, heard not rarely that we insist that students learn about those issues. That is not the philosophy we take here, and so what we really want, though, is students to be interested and motivated on their own to take those courses and have conversations with students about these really compelling issues. On what Amherst is doing with the environment, I'm going to turn it over to Jim Brassard, and he'll talk a little bit about our planned climate action plan.
Great. Thanks, Catherine. I'm Jim Brassard, Chief of Campus Operations, and I've been here for now about 20 years. Part of our philosophy at the college has been resource conservation, and we've had tremendous success on that over the years. But we realize, as you noted, this is a defining issue for this generation and future generations. And conservation in itself, sustainability in itself as an action is important, but it's not our role at the institution. Our role is to connect our students to that, so they emerge from their time here with experiences in sustainability. Experiences in dining services, for example, so they can see our commitment to local, organic, and healthy food and connect those food choices to life choices and to the environment. It's reflected in our creation of an Office of Environmental Sustainability 4 years ago, in which now the director is actively engaging the full community in sustainability and connecting our students through various co-curricular and even curricular initiatives to the campus. So the campus can serve as a living lab, if you will. It's been a very powerful concept in terms of connecting our students. I'll say, though, that perhaps the biggest thing that we can do relative to sustainability and creating awareness around these issues is to walk the walk. And by that, I mean, what are we doing to lower our own carbon footprint for this campus? Now, I can say we've had really great success over the past 10 years through fuel switching, through conservation, through building a state-of-the-art cogeneration plant to produce our electricity and heat, we've reduced our carbon footprint by a full 30%. The other thing that we've done recently is that we just engaged in a very innovative collaboration with 5 other local institutions to establish and build a industrial scale, a utility scale solar photovoltaic initiative, which will provide fully 1/2 of our electricity that we consume on campus. With that initiative alone, we'll be reducing our carbon footprint another 20%. Now, is that enough? No. I think our aspiration, the moral imperative here, is for the institution to move towards carbon neutrality. And to that end, we have convened over the past 3 years a task force that's been working diligently on this and looking at all manners of strategy that involve conservation, technological enhancements, renewable energy. And we feel that that plan is really starting to come together. We're having some important discussions at the senior staff level, and we'll soon be talking to our trustees about what that plan looks like and how we can move to carbon neutrality by a date certain. And we feel that is a really important statement, not just because of the absolute savings that will accrue from that, but because of what we'll be equipping our students to do. Our students will be more conversant around this. They'll be more aware of it. They'll be more sensitive to the importance of this. And while we could get to a carbon neutral perspective, one of the things we have termed in our study is beyond carbon neutrality. And what I mean by that is when our students go forth into their worlds after Amherst, that they bring this knowledge, they bring this perspective to their personal and professional lives. And if they can then carry this to their organizations, to their initiatives, to their communities, we can save even more carbon. So we take this very seriously. We know it's a critical role for the institution, and we're very committed to it.
Any other questions? There was one down here before. I don't know if it's still, is it the back? Okay. Let's get we need a microphone down here. Oh, there's another question there. Okay. This one okay.
Hi. I'm a junior here. The biggest or most major grievance that I've heard from my close friends and others on this campus is Val. So I know that they're making some changes at Val, so I'm optimistic that maybe it'll improve a little, but I was more wondering about the Merrill project and potential for maybe a second dining hall or more dorms going in there.
Well, at least Valentine's a lot better than it used to be, that's for sure. Jim, do you want to take that one too?
So thank you for that question. In my role, I also oversee dining services and Valentine. And to Catherine's point, if you had been a student here 10 years ago, you would have had a far different experience. And some of you may have students who were here a while ago and maybe could reflect on the improvements. Now, are we there fully yet? No, we're not. We're not to the point necessarily we want to be, but we have really elevated Valentine. We have brought in a new executive director and a executive chef who has a perspective around delivering food that is not only delicious, but is sustainable and is food that our students like. So we do focus on getting a lot of student input on the process, and there's many ways to engage in that and to provide feedback. So whatever feedback you'd like to provide, we would gladly welcome that. Now, one of the issues, one of the challenges with Valentine that has hindered our progress is just the facility itself. The facility was built for about 1,550 students back in, well, it dates back into the 20s, but it was renovated in the mid-90s to accommodate that level of service. We're now at about 1,850 students, and it is structured around a traditional cafeteria style. That has created some crowding, and it's also limited some of the innovation that we can do on the menu. State-of-the-art dining facilities now are centered around what is known in the industry as action stations, where students can participate in the construction of handcrafted items for them, and we can differentiate the menu at different stations. But because of the constrained footprint at Valentine, it's limited in terms of where we can go with that. So that brings us to the next question, and that was, with the Science Center complete, and the sciences now having moved out of Merrill Science, what are the opportunities for that building? We have a campus master plan and a framework plan that starts to look at options for facilities and sites around campus. And Merrill represents just an amazing opportunity to enhance our facilities. With the previous questions and some of the things that Catherine said about the need to focus on student life, creating a student life hub in Merrill is now emerging as one of our preferred options. And we're now starting to look quite seriously at what that might look like. Would it be a renovation? Would it be a replacement of that building? What functions might it include? How might we involve students in it to create the best possible environment to address their social and intellectual needs? And of course, as we consider that type of facility, one of the hubs for it would be a dining services to address the deficits that we're experiencing in Valentine right now. So I can say, stay tuned. These projects take time, as you can imagine. It might not benefit you necessarily during your career, but certainly I hope that you see over the next couple of years continuing improvement in Valentine and in the selection of the type of food that's available for you.
Hi. We appreciate and believe this philosophy of liberal arts education, even for the STEM field of majors. I just wonder if you can give a perspective from the future employers' point of view. How do they see it? Because it would be great if they appreciate as well as much of this type of whole life education as to much more narrowed and technical field. Yeah.
Well, certainly what we see, when big employers write columns about this in major publications, we certainly often hear that they're looking for students who are broadly educated, who can communicate well, who can write well, all those sorts of things. One of the things that's great about Amherst College students is that they often have majors that employers don't expect. So one of, a fabulous student some years ago got a job at a consulting company, perhaps largely because he was a religion major, and that was so unusual for the employer that actually became interesting and something for him to talk about in the interview. So I think that employers, obviously many are very different, but I don't think most employers at the level at which we're looking for our students to be employed are looking for very specialized and narrowly educated students. I think they're looking for broad and capacious thinkers, and I think that our kind of education is the kind of education that best prepares students toward that end. There are always going to be people, the naysayers, who think, whatever liberal arts education is a waste of time. All people are learning are basket weaving and, these sort of old cliches. But it's just not true here at Amherst. I mean, our students are learning, and they're learning hard, and they're learning very difficult things. And they are things that are not easily learned. It is not so easy to write well, not so easy to communicate well, not so easy to work with others with whom you don't think you have shared interests. And that is going to become increasingly important in the world of tomorrow. So I realize it's saying keep the faith. We are keeping the faith in liberal arts education. We really believe this is what's going to serve your students best. And of course, we won't know until 30 or 40 or 50 years out. We won't be proven right until, your students have actually already made their careers. But right now, this looks like a really good bet on your student. This looks like a really good form of education for your student, particularly because we don't know what those jobs will look like. Thank you for the question. Any other questions? Okay, so if you're still looking for panels and things this afternoon and you're not going to the football game at 1 p.m. versus Tufts, there is a 2 p.m. panel on the first-year experience and another one on studying away. And at 3 p.m., there's a panel about the Loeb Center. So I hope that you'll join us for some of those events as well. And thank you very much for coming today.